Hey guys, welcome back to the Frost Dog Garage. Today I'm just going to take you through how I did the steering linkage. I tried to follow the instructions as closely as possible. You can see I have the power steering rack installed there, and now you can start to see the steering linkage. Let's see if I can get a good view of this. Just starting right there at the spindle and working up from there under the pedal box and up there to the turn signal switch, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. As I did encounter a few issues. If I did something wrong, someone can comment, but there are some things that I'm sure will be issues for others who are doing this with the complete kit on the Factory 5 Mk5 Roadster. So down here with this first U-joint, or just to begin with, I did lay everything out on a flat surface ahead of time just to make sure everything would fit appropriately, and I knew where everything was going to go. And then from there, I just started to go piece by piece. For the most part, the instructions have you start down here by the steering rack and just work your way up from there. Here with this first U-joint, I didn't really have any issues other than the rods they give you will probably be a little bit too long. So once everything is installed, if you discover, like here, you can see some of this rod is extending past this U-joint, and the instructions call for it being flush right in here. And the reason for that is to prevent this rod from binding on one of these surfaces as the steering is being turned. Mine actually comes to within 1/8 of an inch at the point where it would potentially bind. So I do have some clearance there, but if this rod was to ever work its way down a little bit farther, it could bind my steering. That would be really bad. So I'm probably going to cut this one off flush. Here you have a jam nut, and on top is the set screw. So you've got 2 of these per U-joint, and then you've got 4 of these little screws here that go in just to retain these pins. Once everything is in, they say that you should put thread locker on everything with the exception of these jam nuts and the set screws here. So I went ahead and put thread locker on these, and per U-joint assembly here, there will be 4 of these little screws that retain these pins. So I put thread locker on all of those. And again, just be aware you may need to cut these rods. This lower rod wasn't too bad. The upper portion I've got pretty flush right in here. There was no binding as I turned everything. And then once everything is complete, then they have you tighten down these set screws that are part of the bearing right here. This rod is kind of the intermediate rod, or the middle rod, that goes beneath the pedal box. This one, the instructions call it a 12.5 inch rod. Well, mine was like closer to 15 inches. So I had to cut a fair amount off to get this one to work, and to get it even close to flush once it was lined up inside here. So just be aware, if you receive the same one I did, you'll be doing some cutting on this rod. And again, just used a cut-off saw and worked really well. Same with this U-joint. Once the jam nuts are all tensioned down, then you can remove and put some thread locker on these little pin retaining screws here. So that being said, I want to move over here to the turn signal switch that came with my kit. I guess it's a new design, closer to some of the ones guys have been doing aftermarket. I guess Factory 5 finally decided that they should make a change there, and so this is what I got. Let me climb in here where I can explain a few things and show you what I'm talking about. So there you have it. In the instructions, it talks about trying to get your center post directly in the center of the turn signal switch. First of all, you do assemble a portion of the switch, and you put the rod on here, the lever, and the little button down here. All those get assembled. The wiring portion comes with half of the assembly that you put together. Now, this rod over here, I was surprised that they only had this little screw that goes into plastic to hold this rod on, because it does take a bit of force to get it to actuate like that. And I'm just wondering if over time that screw in plastic will work its way loose. So I'm not really sure about that. We'll see what I can do about it. But essentially, what you do is you get it lined up in the center, and to do that, there's a few adjustments that you can make. One of the adjustments you can make is here in the pillow block that I have mounted right here. You could put shims in between the pillow block and the frame, which would basically move the pillow block out this way, causing this rod here to move to the right to try and get everything centered. Another thing you can do is there are some adjustments you can make up top here, as the holes that go through this mounting bracket that comes in the turn signal switch package. The holes are elongated, or they're ovaled, so that you can pull the bracket out or push it in. If you need to move it up or down, they say you can add some shims or some washers to it. I ended up actually adding 3 washers on this side and 2 on the other side in order to get this perfectly centered. I couldn't really do any adjustments to my pillow block, because if I did, it would move the shaft in the wrong direction. And there are some adjustments up and down that you can do, and so that worked just fine for getting the rod in the center vertically. But horizontally, if I was to add shims, it would move it in the wrong direction, so there wasn't much I could do other than making the adjustments up top here, which I mainly did up here. Well, you can see at the top, I have 2 different size bolts in here. I believe it called for 3/8, which would not fit the pillow block that they have up here. So I had to use 3/16. Just to show you here, 5/16. The 3/8, here's the bag with 3/8, 1 inch long button head screws, or button head bolts. Yeah, these were too big. They wouldn't fit through the pillow block. So I went ahead and opted for these ones here, the 5/16, 1 inch. At least that's what's in the one on the right here. So on the bottom, you got the button head, and on the top, the nylock, and it just engages the threads with the 2 shims that I have on. But on this side with 3 shims or washers, it wouldn't engage at all. So I went ahead and used a bolt out of this bag here, the 5/16 by 1.5 inches. I'm sure they're supposed to be used for something else, so I'll be going to the hardware store. I'm going to replace both of these actually with 1.5 inch long button head bolts that go in there, and they'll be the 5/16. So that way I'll be able to use this wherever it's supposed to be used later on. But that's how I ended up doing it. Just to give you an idea of how this turn signal functions, what they have you do is just take a crescent wrench on the shaft here to be able to spin the steering. So to begin with, you spin it until your steering is as straight as possible. And so I just kind of eyeballed it until I got it straight. And then once it's straight, you take this little collar that has these, see if it'll focus on it, has these rabbit ears on it. So this collar also has a set screw that will maintain it on this on the shaft. And the one issue I had was this shaft. I don't know if Factory 5 manufactured it or where they got it from, but it was a really tight fit to get this into this sleeve right here. So I had to do some pounding to get it in there. And here on top, if I can show right where that pencil is, here on top is where the Belleville washers or springs go, and they're basically supposed to give it some tension. Well, I put one in there, but I don't really think I even needed them because of how extremely tight the shaft is fitting here on the sleeve. So tight that I don't think I can get it back out. If I need to take it out, I'm going to have to take some pillow blocks off and pull the entire assembly out, as well as removing this pillow block bearing here and the turn signal assembly. The whole thing will have to come out if I need to remove anything. I can't just pull the shaft out anymore. It was just that tight. I even used a little white lithium grease on it. It didn't matter. Extremely tight. So maybe if I had the ability to machine down, or I guess maybe I could have tried sanding it down a little bit to get it to fit in there a little better. Maybe that would have worked. If someone else has some better ideas or suggestions, I would appreciate them. But as of right now, this is basically where it's gonna have to be. I'm a little concerned with how far out the steering wheel will be once I get it on there, but we'll see when I get to that point. Anyway, back to the collar. So this collar with the little ears on it, you want to set it so that, and it's been welded. I imagine Factory 5 did it, but this little piece here with the ears has been welded to the rest of the collar behind it that has the set screw in it. I was a little concerned with the weld, thinking maybe it would trip the turn signal and cause it to turn off prematurely, but so far it seems to work okay. So now, where you see these ears, the instructions have you just kind of draw a straight line between the ears, and along that line you match it up with this flat surface, this plastic surface here, so that they're both parallel. Also, the collar you position so that these ears are just engaging these two springs on either side that will ultimately deactivate the turn signal when the steering is turned. And I'll kind of demonstrate how that works with this crescent wrench. So if you get a crescent wrench on there and turn it, well, first of all, let me activate the signal. So move it down. So we've got a left signal going on, and you end up turning to the left, and you see that little ear down there engages the spring to that point. And then when you come back the other way, that's what disengages the signal. All right, then that's back to center. For going the other direction, move it up, then you turn to the right, and you can see it a little bit better. Engages the ear, and then when you turn it back, it disengages everything. That's how it works. If the collar was too far one way or the other, it just wouldn't engage. So if this collar was out too far, then the springs would be riding on the smooth portion, and it wouldn't engage or disengage. And the same if the collar was in too far, it would just miss it altogether. So you got to get it just right. Then I had to pull the whole assembly out to tighten down that set screw and then position the whole turn signal assembly back there. So Anyway, that's it in a nutshell. If anyone has any questions or comments, please leave them below. And remember to like, share, subscribe. And we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.